Welcome back to the Mindfully Masculine podcast. This is Charles. I am recording this on Sunday, October 6th for release tomorrow, Monday, October 7th. And we are again on the verge of another major hurricane hitting Florida. So hopefully next week's episode will be out on time, but no promises. So Dan and I will continue to discuss Unf Your Boundaries by Dr. Faith Harper. Topics covered in this week's episode include respecting boundaries in relationships, fear of conflict in close relationships, loss aversion and the sunk cost fallacy, deep and authentic exchanges, unsolicited advice and boundaries, therapist versus romantic partner roles, handling no and rejection, teaching resilience, mindfulness and self-awareness, communication strategies, respecting people versus respecting ideas, and handling boundaries and accountability. Thank you so much for listening. Please check out our website, mindfullymasculine.com, for any info we feel is worth sharing, and enjoy the show.
Good morning, Charles. How are you?
I'm well, Dan. Thank you. How are you?
I am also well.
Excellent. So we're really rounding it out with the end of this book here. We got a couple episodes left, this one and probably one more, and then we'll be done with Unf Your Boundaries by Faith Harper. So I'm looking forward to moving on to the next book. This chapter is called How Do You Respect Other People's Boundaries? And I like that it starts off with a few questions that can serve as a diagnostic for how good are you at respecting other people's boundaries, and what are some clues that this might not be your forte. And yeah, we can take some time to answer these for ourselves, and maybe that'll help people answer them for themselves as well. First question she asks is, generally speaking, do people tend to respond positively to you? Do they tell you they feel comfortable sharing with you and that you hear them without judgment? I would say, generally speaking, yes. The problems I've run into in the past is with my partners. I'm not quite as good at these skills as I am with my immediate circle.
Why do you think that is?
Because it feels like there's more to risk to being able to hear people without judgment. I don't generally get defensive with relationships or in relationships that don't really matter a lot to me.
It's a lot easier, sure.
Yeah, like if I'm in a relationship with somebody and I feel like conflict would lead to a situation where I feel a sense of loss, then I'm actually more likely to exacerbate that conflict.
It makes sense because once we quote unquote have something as human beings, it's much more valuable, right? So we're much more loss avoidant than...
I was just having a conversation with my girlfriend last night about how you feel worse about losing $20 than you feel good about finding $20.
Yeah.
And I think that's generally the way that we react to things. We're, like you said, more loss averse than we are...
Averse, that's the word I was looking for, not avoidant, but yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And so as a result, those close relationships feel valuable in a way that you feel like you have to defend them. You have to hoard them.
Yeah.
In a way that you don't feel about other relationships. So it's easy to be not judgmental when you don't feel like so much is at risk.
I'm wondering if there's also like a time element that adds value to the relationships that we're talking about. So the ones that we're spending the most time with end up becoming some of the most valuable. So I think we have stronger loss aversion to those types of relationships, right? Yeah.
Yeah, loss aversion, and also you can fall into that sunken cost fallacy too.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's like, oh, I've spent so much time and effort in this situation, so therefore I need to throw more time and effort at it, when sometimes that drive outlasts the actual value or the return on that relationship.
It's tough. I feel like you need to figure out some sort of objective way of measuring, right, what you've put in it. Right. So it's the same thing like with a used car. You're going through this with your car too, is like, at what point you got a great deal initially, and then it's just like, all right, well, now air conditioning is busted, or like tire needs to be replaced, or what? Like, at what point is it like worth selling off and trying another
I mean, with a car,
another car.
With a car, it's a little bit easier because it's like, oh, I got a great deal. It was only $4,000, but it's going to cost $1,000 to fix the air conditioner. And then you just say, well, if the sticker on this guy was 5,000 instead of 4,000, would I have still bought it? Yeah, I would have. Okay, then no problem. Go ahead and put, $1,000 into it. But it doesn't go that cut and dry as much as you and I as engineers.
We would love to,
yes, that it was that cut and dry with relationships. It just isn't.
Squeeze a square peg into the round hole. Well, I'll make it work somehow, right? Yeah.
So the next question is, do you have people, or at least one person in your life with whom you're able to have deep and authentic exchanges of ideas and feelings? And yeah, I would say that I'm lucky that I have multiple people like that in my life where I can really, and Renata's the only one that I have to pay. So that's nice.
Oh, you pay just in different ways. That's all.
I guess that's what's true, yes. But Renata's the only one that I have to write a check to have those deep and authentic exchanges with, where I've got other friends, among whom I number you, that we can have those deep conversations. And then the third question, are you able to maintain these relationships over a long period of time? Well, in your case, yes. And everybody else's case, not really. Again, Renata, but I pay her to listen to me. Yeah. So how about you? I assume you have people in your life that you can have deep and authentic exchanges with.
Yeah, not a whole lot. Obviously, you are definitely one of them, probably on one of the deepest levels is for sure with you. And then it's been a challenge for me to figure out at what level am I out of my depth, I guess is the best way to put it, with certain relationships, right? So I know
for sure
I've relied too much on my romantic partner.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
And I definitely think, looking back, that shot me in the foot.
Yeah. We've mentioned that on this podcast before about the threat that relationships face when, speaking of trying to put those square pegs in round holes, you try to turn your partner into a therapist, and not every thought you have is made to be vented to your romantic partner.
Yeah.
Now, if you have nobody else in your life that you can share those thoughts with, then it does feel like, well, she's my only choice for airing these insecurities or these things that I get angry about. Like, she's the only one that I have to talk to, period. So therefore, if I'm going to not just keep these things completely bottled up, I've got to unload them on her.
Yeah, but you're asking a tall order unless she works professionally in that area. Like, you're asking somebody who may not have experience in handling and being able to advise and being a therapist, right?
Yeah.
And it's unfair then, because if your expectations are, hey, you should be willing to do this, you should be good at doing this, at making me feel better, and then now, you're introducing a whole bunch of problems into the relationship because your expectations are not based in reality at that point. And there's so many, the good thing is these days, there's so many different forms of people who can do, you've got coaches, you've got therapists, you've got psychiatrists.
Absolutely.
At many levels, so wherever you're comfortable with, but the difference is you got to be willing to part with your money and realize that
there's value there.
There's value there. A lot of, especially if you're not used to paying for conversation.
Correct.
It could feel like, oh my God, I'm paying how much for what seems like to be floating in the air, right? No like tangible value, that a book or something like. So I think that is why a lot of people have been resistant to talking or paying for therapy and relying on their partner.
Yes. And even in a situation where your partner happens to be a coach or a psychoanalyst or whatever, you still got to be careful of, you don't want to give your partner reasons to move you from the category of boyfriend or husband into the category of patient. Because if she's a good therapist, she's generally not wanting to sleep with her patients.
Good point.
If you work yourself into that patient category because you're constantly unloading all of your stresses and insecurities on her, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to get moved into that category of, oh, this is somebody who it's my job to help them. And if she feels like it's her job to help you, she's not going to be as turned on about wanting to be with you.
Yeah. You got to remember that you are responsible for providing things for the relationship as well, right? And not just a need take kind of basis.
Yeah, 100%. what kinds of situations make it hard for you to respect the boundaries of others? Is it with certain people or when people are making certain decisions that cause you concern? Yeah, I would say like respecting everybody, whether they verbalize it or not, for the most part, has a boundary or preference. They don't want to get unsolicited advice from you. That's generally, we don't want that as humans. But it's difficult for me if I'm in a situation where I see somebody that I care about having difficulty that I think I've got the answer to.
Oh, yeah.
It's very hard for me to go to them and say, hey, do you want to hear any advice about this, before just unloading it all, unloading the advice on them.
Yeah.
So that's a situation where it does definitely make it difficult for me to respect that boundary that I perceive that they have, whether they've expressed it to me or not. We all imprint our own boundaries on other people, and I certainly don't want somebody just coming up to me saying, hey, here's what you should handle that this way instead. And so as a result, I think it's healthy for me to assume that other people don't want that either.
So you know what my unhealthy workaround is for that?
What's that?
So I will give the advice, and then I'll make a little joke about it, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll make a little joke to excuse it, to apologize and go, yeah, this is the unsolicited advice. I apologize for the unsolicited advice I just gave you, kind of thing. So I still get that fix of...
Yeah, you feel like
I feel like I'm helping and
swooping into their rescue.
Right. And then at the same time...
But you're giving them an out. And I piss off.
Right, exactly. But I'm not asking in advance, so I've still violated the boundary in that respect, right? I didn't...
And you also know that when you give them...
I'm struggling with it.
When you give them the choice to ignore your advice after you've already offered the advice, you know that there's very little chance that they're going to say, hey, I'm glad you said that because I was planning on ignoring this advice anyway. And don't give me any more in the future unless I ask for it. Yeah, nobody does that.
No, they're always like, oh, no, thanks. That's helpful, blah, 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 blah.
Want to be nice.
Yes, right, exactly. And so, yeah, I've done that enough to where I need to stop because I'm not feeling good about it.
That's a good indication that you might be ready for a change.
Yeah.
She says, after you ask yourself these questions of, do people respond positively to you? Do they share things with you? Do you have people that you can have these deep conversations with? Are you maintaining your relation? If the answer to any of these is no, that doesn't give you an excuse to shame and beat yourself up. That just gives you an opportunity to say, okay, these things are not going as well as I'd like them to. So maybe I do need to revisit how I handle other people's boundaries and how I use other people's boundaries as a way to show them that I respect them and that I'm okay with them being their own person, instead of feeling like, okay, I've got to adjust you so that you turn into what I need you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so don't beat yourself up too much if you notice that you tend to do that. Just realize that you've got an opportunity to make a change here that's going to be better for you and for them and for your relationship. And it can be difficult to not, when a book like this points out something that you're doing wrong, it's real easy to make that leap from I'm doing this thing wrong to there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to, absolutely, you got to put the brakes on a little bit.
Yeah.
I think as humans, we tend to go extreme, like from one end to the other. It's just like, oh, I wasn't even aware of this. Oh my God, I'm a piece of junk because I'm doing this.
Yes.
And it's hard to kind of, what helps bring me back is just remembering, hey, look, nobody's perfect. I'm human. I'm working on it. I'm figuring it out. At least I'm aware of it. I can do something about it now. It's better than where I was literally 5 minutes ago when I wasn't even aware of it.
Yeah, and it also gives you the opportunity to remember that one question you can always ask of people that you have really any relationship with is, okay, what do you need from me right now? Or what do you expect of me right now? And then you can let them say, well, I know you've been through a similar situation, so I was hoping you would tell me exactly what you did to solve it so that I could do that too.
It's my dream scenario.
I know.
I don't think that would ever happen. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No, I keep waiting for it, but it never materialized.
Well, that sounded good just listening to that.
Yeah. That would be, and I think that's something that as men...
You're so wise and experienced. I really was looking to do everything exactly what you were going to tell me to do and give you positive feedback about it. Like,
yeah, I think...
Oh, I wish.
As men, that is something that we're always waiting to hear, and we rarely hear it. And rarely should we hear it, because everybody's situation is different, and nobody owes us that level of worship at our altar.
Yeah.
It would be neat to hear that, but it's something that I think we have this expectation that if we're not hearing that, that means that people don't love us or respect us or look up to us. But it's really just, it's a fantasy.
Yeah.
There's no, people don't talk that way, and we shouldn't expect it. I've never said that to somebody.
Oh, yeah, no.
So why should I expect anybody to say it to me?
Yeah. The closest I've come to is, hey, can I get your advice on this?
Same. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, can I pick your brain?
Yeah, right.
You know, that's about, the
best we can hope for.
And if somebody did lay that kind of praise on top of me and try to butter me up, I'd be like, what's going on right now? What's your angle? Like, I think that I want that, but if it really happened to me, I'd be like, what's going on right now?
Right. Because that's not natural. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so she then gets into an acknowledgement that none of us like being told no to pretty much anything that we want to do or we're requesting to do. So what's the way that we could handle those no messages that we get from people in the best ways? First, we pay attention to our own feelings with some self-compassion, and we allow ourselves to be honest about, man, I was really hoping that I would get a yes in this situation, and I didn't, and it sucks, and I feel really crappy about that. We can do that. One of the things, when I talk about our podcast to other people who ask me, well, what's it about? What do you guys talk about? One of the weaknesses that I think is out there right now that young men struggle with, and men in general, but especially young men, is I don't think we're being taught resilience at any kind of level where it can make a meaningful difference in our lives. When it comes to certainly dating relationships, and a guy gets either a no to a girl that he's asked out, or he gets broken up with, like, very few times do I see a guy who is willing and able to say, man, I really wanted this to happen. It meant a lot to me. And the fact that it's not going the way that I wanted to really sucks and really hurts. It's we either pretend like it doesn't hurt us at all and we just blow it off like, screw her, I didn't want to go out with her that much anyway. Yeah, we either minimize our feelings or we minimize the pain of not getting what we wanted. Where, in my case, I didn't have a dad that was telling me pretty much all of what life is going to be about is trying really hard to get things that matter a lot to you and dealing with not getting them most of the time, and realizing, okay, I put in a lot of work for this job, for this girl, for this mortgage I wanted to get approved for, whatever it is. I put in a lot of work and I didn't get the thing that I wanted. And that's okay. I'm going to live to fight another day. And there will be other things that I want that I do end up getting.
Yeah, it's that mindset.
That mindset is not something I was taught. And I don't know that most of my friends got trained in that either.
I think in anybody that I know that is quote unquote trained in that or is good at that, it wasn't explicitly taught to them that way. It was, they witnessed it. They had good role models who behaved in those ways when they had those adversities. And so those were lucky. Those people I feel like were fortunate to basically learn through osmosis almost.
Right. Yeah. And I think when it comes to learning things and teaching things to other people, there's really three ways. Either somebody tells you what you should do, or somebody shows you what you should do. And out of those two, showing is definitely better than telling. But the third option, which is way better, is somebody who tells you what to do and then shows you how to do it.
Yeah.
That's really how you learn life skills, especially these soft skills that you're not going to get from a book. It's going to be, hey, here's how you should handle this. Now watch me as I handle it exactly this way. And let's talk about what my results are.
Yeah, I think that's probably why we love that Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before book.
Correct.
That is really what you just described.
Yeah.
Right? She tells you about it. She gives you situations. She says how she handles it and also how she guides patients through those specific things and those specific situations. So I think that's probably also a testament to why that book is so popular.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just with us.
Yes. I always cite that book as the one that we've covered on this podcast that I haven't had a bunch of complaints about, or really any. She got it pretty much dead on.
Yeah.
Put no in its proper place. So I'm trying to remember which book it was. I think it might have been Dating Essentials for Men, where Glover really helped frame rejection as it was that book where he was basically saying, when you ask a girl out and she says no, she is not offering an objective evaluation of your value and worth as an individual. She's saying, I have low interest in going out with you right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's really that's all she is capable of saying to you. She doesn't know you. She doesn't know everything you're about, what you really like when nobody's around. She doesn't know any of those things. All she knows is, based on what you presented to me so far, I have a low level of interest in going on a date with you.
Yeah, another case for why you want to build your mental awareness muscle, your mindfulness muscle, because if you are mindful of the situation, of yourself, you will realize that she has very little information to go on, right?
Right.
You are presenting, and that also might help you in another way where you might make a little bit more of an effort to present more information and be willing to present more information to her to literally, everybody's in sales all the time. You do need to sell people on things. It's not a bad word, right? And sales is really just presenting information of that you feel would be beneficial for that other person, right?
Yes.
And so if you feel like you can bring benefits to her life by being in it and being a part of that relationship, then you absolutely should be talking about it and selling it and presenting it. And most of us, that takes work and effort to do that, right? So
it takes somebody telling you that you should focus on that.
Exactly right. So if you're not mindful, right? And so the nice thing is, by meditation, you could actually end up getting better relationships because you're practicing building that mindfulness muscle of your own self-awareness. And then you can now apply that to this kind of situation here, or a job, right? If you're going for a job interview too, it's just like, how much information are you giving that other person about you? The more information they have, the better decision that they will be able to make.
Yeah, because how different is the emotional experience of getting a no on either asking a girl out for a date, or getting a no on trying to get hired for a position, or trying to get a new client if you own your own business. You can either look at it in terms of, why am I such a loser? Why am I such a piece of garbage? Or the exact opposite, how can I improve my presentation skills?
Mm-hmm.
One of those feels really good to think about, at least to me, and one of those feels really bad to think about. Like, why am I such a loser? If you're put in a position where you're thinking thoughts like that, you're not happy. You're not doing well.
No, but
that's not a good day. But something as simple as, what could I do to improve my presentation skills? It's like, okay, tell me more. I want to know more about this.
But it's a lot easier to accept the thing that takes a lot less time and effort, which is, well, I'm just a piece of junk and I'm done with it.
Yeah, nobody's ever going to want me.
I don't need to invest any time and energy or in thinking that way, but I want to improve my presentation skills. Okay. Well, now you're at the tip of the iceberg. Now what? Oh my gosh, how much work is this going to take?
Right. Yeah. It's definitely,
I see why a lot of it's faulty on the.
Yes, I do too. It's comforting to just adopt the mindset. At least it's comforting in the short term to adopt the mindset of, there's nothing I could do. Mm-hmm. I did my best and I didn't get the outcome that I wanted.
Right.
Woe is me. That there's something soothing about that, where it's like, circumstances conspired against me. There was nothing I could have done differently. That's different from the other extreme is, this was all my fault and it's up to me to completely change myself so that this never happens to me again. There's a spot in the middle that says, okay, how much of this was under my control? What could I do to be incrementally better next time this comes up?
Yeah.
But that's where you're being the most objective, and you're also looking at, okay, so I've got to improve my presentation skills. What's the easiest part of my presentation to either a potential employer or a potential girlfriend? What's the easiest thing that I can change for where I get the most bang for my buck as far as investing in myself? Like what's
shoes? Definitely shoes. It's all about the shoes.
The shoe, but you could carry that metaphor in a lot of different directions, for sure. Okay, recognize the boundary that you hit and learn from it. So if someone gives you a no, they're setting a boundary, and that's a good thing because they're giving you information about them and the kind of relationship you have or would have with them. So recognize and appreciate that they've communicated a boundary. Whenever somebody says, essentially, no, I don't agree to that, I don't consent to that, then they're telling you something about them that you can use going forward. And even if going forward means not having any more interactions with them, at least you've learned something about where their lines are.
Yeah, as I've gotten older, I've realized one of the things I've realized is that people are very scared or intimidated or have habits of not communicating because of a number of different reasons, whether they don't want to get people upset, whether they feel ashamed about what they have to say. And I've been in that boat as well, and I still am from time to time. And so anytime anybody communicates anything of difficulty to me, first thing I do is go, thank you. Like, thank you for not making me work to try to figure out what the problem is or what's going on here. And thank you. Also try to encourage you. Thank you for feeling that you can trust me enough to really tell me authentically how you feel,
right?
Not feel like I'm going to make fun of you or judge you or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, I realize how valuable that is in somebody who's willing to trust me and willing to communicate with me, because those are things that a lot of people don't do. And again, I just never thought about it until, honestly, we started going through all these books on the podcast. Yeah. But now anytime anybody in my life is willing to really open up with me and stuff like that, I try to remember to really praise that and encourage that.
Yeah, that's important, because if you are somebody who...
Even if it's something I don't want to hear.
But especially if you don't want to
hear. Right.
Because that's what I was going to say. It comes down to, if you're always training people on how they should interact with you. And while I would say it's never 100%, if somebody decides to lie to you or not tell you the whole truth, that's never your fault. You're not making them be dishonest with you. However, if you're also training them that you're somebody who can't handle the truth, then you're teaching them the lesson of, boy, it'd probably be so much easier if I just didn't tell him that I ran into my ex-boyfriend when I was at the coffee shop today. Because I know if I tell him, he's going to lose his mind about it, and I'm going to hear him getting jealous and just blah, 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 getting into his feelings and losing emotional self-control. So it'd be easier if I just didn't mention it. And so then, yeah, that's on you. You're the one that's teaching her that's an easier way for her to be.
Yeah, and you're setting yourself up for struggles down the road, because now you don't know what the truth is, right? And now you're going to start question things. And
right, you're
resentful,
and you're subject to her.
You almost did it to yourself. Almost did it to yourself.
You're subject to her opinion of what can this guy handle and what can this guy not handle. And she could get that right or she could get that wrong, but you're teaching her that it's in her interest to consider what can he handle, what can he not handle. And where if you can handle everything with honesty and say things like what she offers here is, I'm bummed, but I get it. No hard feelings. If you get to the point where you say that honestly, then people feel like, okay, well, I can share anything with him, and he's not going to pretend like it doesn't matter, nor is he going to explode, but he's going to be honest no matter what. Then that's somebody that can be told anything.
Yeah, and it's tricky here. It's a fine line versus when you say handle. I think a lot of us think, all right, you put up a shield and it doesn't matter what she says. You are almost a statue. You're like one of the guards outside the palace, right? And and you're completely stoic, and it doesn't matter. Like everything bounces off of you. That's not good either. I think, like you said, it's important to say, yeah, I'm upset. Don't be upset if you can find a way to like not be upset with her or whoever's telling you that. but it doesn't mean you need to hide your emotions about it either.
Right. Yeah. If you choose to be honest and say, hey, you saying no to this, or you sharing this truth with me, it upsets me, it bums me out, it disappoints me a little, but I understand where you're coming from and I'm not angry. If you can say that and mean that, and your partner or anybody in your life just focuses on the part where you said, hey, it upset me, and that triggers them and that upsets them and they can't handle you being honest about your feelings, then that's also a piece of information that you can leverage in deciding at what level you should be interacting with this person or not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's been a place where I have dropped the ball before in my previous relationships, where somebody would tell me, hey, I'm upset because you said or did this, or I'm disappointed that you said or did this, and then I immediately go into defensive mode. That makes you a not great partner, and it makes you a partner that's a little harder to stick with, and a little harder to work things out with than you would be otherwise.
Yeah.
And so being told that you did something upsetting is a skill that you have to develop if you want to have a partner who's honest with you about how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another muscle that is pretty tough. I'd rather do triceps than work on that muscle. Okay, so she also shares a communication strategy called STFU, which normally we would stands for shut the F up, but in her case, or the person she got it from, it stands for something else. It stands for share time, meaning when you're having an interaction with somebody, a conversation, try to be conscious of how much you're talking, how much you're listening, and don't let it go to extremes on either side, where they're the only one talking or they're the only one listening. Try to make sure that there's a balance there. The T stands for 3 seconds. Give others a chance to continue to speak or jump into the conversation before you begin to speak. So if there's a pause in the conversation, let it go for 3 seconds before you decide that it's your turn to talk.
Yeah, because people could still be processing stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's something that I need to work on.
Yeah, me too. I was just talking to my girlfriend last night.
Like driving on the road. Oh, wait, there's 3 feet of space between the two cars. I'm in there.
Exactly.
I'm in there.
Yeah, you and I on this show, we interrupt each other frequently, but I believe in a way that works for us. I hope it doesn't cause stress for me, so I hope it doesn't cause stress for the listeners either.
Yeah.
But you and I have a bit of a shorthand that we've developed, and it does include jumping in when the other person may not be completely done with their idea.
Well, I think part of that might be like might be a comedy timing type of thing. I don't know, or a humor type of thing. I feel like sometimes I do that when, if I were to wait too long, like I might miss my window to make my joke.
Yeah. And I can't think of a radio show or a podcast with multiple hosts that don't also have some of that going on too, where they jump in a little on top of each other when they feel like it's worth it. Find empathy. That's what the F stands for. Really listen to people, not just the content, but their backstory. Where are they coming from? And then this one really stood out to me. Understanding is not necessary. Active listening is designed to help us better understand others, but that doesn't mean we always are successful at doing so. We've all had that what the hell moment in regard to someone else's worldview. And it's okay to accept it without getting it. And that's tough to be like, okay, I think I've got a window into where you're coming from, but I'll never understand what you really mean.
Yeah.
And especially if you get politics or religion into the conversation, it's very easy to say, all right, I think I understand what's important to you on this subject, but I have no clue how you got there. Especially in an election year, that has definitely been a place I've been where it's like, all right, I hear you telling me what your core values are. I have no idea why or how you would have landed on those, though.
Yeah. Sometimes logic is different for different people, I feel, right?
Yeah. And sometimes even calling it logic feels like a stretch, but
right.
Everybody has a mode that gets them to where they think they need to be. And we don't have to understand it. I would say we don't even have to respect it. I believe in respecting people, but not bending over backwards to respect ideas.
Yeah. What do you define respecting ideas as? Give me an example of that. Because to me, when you say that, I'm thinking it's not making fun of their ideas to their face versus actually participating. I don't know if you mean actually like participating in their ideas. Like,
I would say if somebody tells me something, and at the risk of the slippery slope fallacy taking over, I'll go extreme. If somebody says, deep down between you and me, I don't know that this group of people really should have a right to vote in this country.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm going to say,
yeah,
okay, I understand that's your opinion. And that's about as far as I'm going to go.
Yeah.
I respect that person has agency, and I grant them the dignity of saying, you have a right to hold any opinion that you want to.
Yeah.
And until the point where you're trying to enact policies based on these ideas, I'm okay with you being wrong about whatever you like.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, I'm okay with people when it comes to just sitting around the Thanksgiving table or sitting around the table at a restaurant or a bar. It's like, you're allowed to have whatever wrong opinions you want to have. Now, when you decide to file your papers to run for Congress, then I'm going to be a little bit more vocal with my opposition to your screwed up ideas.
Yeah.
But as long as you're just somebody's crazy uncle sitting around the Thanksgiving table,
got it.
Hey, good luck. You can feel whatever crazy thing you want to feel, and I'm not gonna say shame on you. You're not allowed to feel that way.
Right. Yeah.
So I will respect your personhood.
Yeah.
I'm not going to jump in and say that idea has merit. You're really onto something.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. It does make it then tough to respect the person when the ideas are, if it was that extreme. I guess
when it is that extreme, yes.
Right. Yeah. What level are we talking about?
Yes. When it comes down to, because of your demographics or your lifestyle, I don't think you should get to vote. I don't think you should get to be a citizen. I don't think you should get to exist. Then it's like, okay, I recognize that you're allowed to have those opinions, but I'm probably not picking up the phone and asking you to hang out.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't want to. So that's where I
recognize that you're not getting another invite to Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Or, the Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day, that'd be a great time for me to schedule a vacation.
Yeah.
So that I'm the one who removes myself.
It's funny how that's always like the most commonly used
litmus test for that.
Right. Is Thanksgiving dinner. Right. And it's so funny, like our sense of social obligation to invite people who seem to be just so different in our opinions and ideas of ourselves. It seems to be, we're going to bypass all of that and feel like we have to invite them to Thanksgiving dinner, even though they might be on a different freaking planet.
Yeah, and that's tough for me because when I'm in those situations, if somebody brings up a topic that I didn't bring up, and then they bring it up in a way that really, it's not, I want to have this discussion. It's, I want to crowbar my political or religious ideas into this meeting this gathering that we're currently having.
I believe that was the high conflict personality that Dr. Faith was talking about.
Yeah. It's like, okay, if you're going to open this door and walk through it, I'm not just going to pretend that I didn't see you open the door and walk through it. I'm going to respond to it. And usually at my best, I'll lead with something like, look, I see this quite a bit differently than you do. Are you capable of having a conversation, or do you think if I disagree with you, are you going to get upset?
Yeah, I feel like that's going to...
And, well, to be completely honest, even that is a shitty rhetorical technique on my part, because who's going to say I can't handle...
Exactly.
I can't handle defending this position.
You want some of this? You're literally like, it's baiting them.
It's me baiting the corner where they say, oh, no, of course I can debate my ideas dispassionately. And then I proceed to launch the nukes.
That's tough. That's
yeah. So I started by saying at my best, no, but really it's at my worst that I do that. Where what I really should do is just ignore it, or if it's crazy enough, I should just get up and leave.
Again, right? Yeah, I think it's what's on the line here. If they're saying they're going to run for county commissioner or office or something like that, then at that point it might be worth opening up that can of worms. But otherwise, if it's just your crazy uncle,
yeah, then you could just leave it as either do the gray rock approach where you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And not go any further.
Right. Because they're clearly looking for something if they're bringing it out of nowhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or saying something pseudo condescending like, that's certainly an opinion people have, which I've said stuff like that before.
Yeah.
When I didn't want to get into it with somebody.
Yeah.
And then if they're like, well, what do you think? It's like, then it's, well, do you really want to know, or do you?
You don't want to know what I say.
Yeah. Can't handle the truth. Yeah. All right. Well, that's where we are for that chapter. On the next one, we're going to get into how do we hold ourselves accountable for boundary violations. And that's a little tougher one. So this will be a good one to get into. But let's stop there for now.
Sounds good.
And we'll talk to you more next time, Dan.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the entire episode. We appreciate it. Check out mindfullymasculine.com for any info we are willing and able to share and our full audio and video episodes.